Hello, welcome to this welcome to this second workshop of a series of webinars. We started last week, with the first one, and here we are with the second webinar organized by Ellie Publishing. I'm here today with Nina Lauder. I'm going to introduce to her shortly. And well, my name is Silvia. I'm sure you already know my name. Just bear with me a few seconds, because a few minutes, just because I would like to share with you some technical information regarding this workshop, this live workshop. So this webinar consists of about 45 minutes of presentation by Nina Lauder and about 15 minutes of questions and answers. So especially questions and answers. Seize the moment. Feel free to ask questions, to share your comments, anything you might like to ask Nina, please feel free to do it, okay? You can just write down in the chat box. Just have a go on the platform if you are on the smartphone or on your computer. It's called questions or chat box, okay? Have a go. I'll be like sitting here at the back, of this platform, and I will get back to you for anything. So please feel free to, see this moment and ask for any tips or questions to Nina. Then this workshop will be recorded and the video will be available later. And a certificate will be released to all participants. Tomorrow late afternoon, I would say, you will receive an email with a PDF of the certificate with your name, okay? And then last but not least, remember to download the PDF, a sort of summary of this presentation that our dear speaker has put together for you. Remember to do it at the end or before, at least before the end of the session. It could be useful for you, for your archive, your study, for your knowledge after the webinar, okay? So directly from Spain now, I'm very happy to give you, Nina, the floor with your beautiful talk, Language, Literacy and SEL, Social Emotional Learning for Young Learners. Thank you, Nina, for being here.
Thank you so much, grazie mille. So hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. I am here today with my friend Rocky, who is joining us as well. He's very curious to see who you are. And we are ready to begin. Come on, Rocky, sit down. Okay, so I'm just going to have him sit down and we can start. So welcome to our webinar. So let's take a look. We're doing a webinar on language literacy and SEL. Thank you very much to ELI Publishing for having me. I hope you're all doing well and that your week and month are off to a good start. And as Sylvia said, you'll be getting a PDF summary of the slides following the webinar. So what we're going to do today in the 45 minutes is first, a warm-up. Second, we're going to define what literacy is. Third, we're going to look at some practical ideas. And then we're going to have closing and reflection, where you can ask me questions and I will give you the handout. So let's get started. First, the warm-up. I wanted to start with a quote from Kofi Annan that says, "Literacy unlocks the door to learning through life." So this is sort of the base of our session today, that literate students, literate children, they have learning accessible to them throughout life if they learn literacy at an early age. Nowadays, we have very high literacy rates in most countries, but again, those children who are illiterate suffer greatly when it comes to learning opportunities and, of course, work opportunities. So let's take a look a little bit about your teacher. So, as you know, my name is Nina Lauder. I am from, you can write in the chat box, I'm sure Sylvia will see the answers in the chat box. I am from so from here, And this little animal friend is also from the same country. He has come with me from where? So you can see here this flag. If you want to, you can write in the chat box where I'm from.
Yes, I can see, or I can already see some answers.
What do they think? I'm from
Canada.
Canada. Very good. So from Canada. And my little friend Rocky Raccoon is also from Canada. But I don't live in Canada anymore. As Sylvia said, I live in Europe and I live in the south of Europe. So right now I am in Sevilla in the south of Spain, but I spend most of my time in a little village on the coast called El Rompido. So from a big city in Canada to a small fishing village in Spain. I am the author of Pandy the Panda, which now is not a book that they use in pre-primary, but I've been working on materials development for different companies for over 20 years. And you've got this last number, 34. So what's that number got to do with Nina? This number is the number of years that I have been teaching. So probably many of you were not born when I started teaching. So I've been teaching for a very long time. I'm still teaching at the university and at a couple of schools as a visiting teacher. And I can't see the chat box, but if you'd like, if you feel like it, you can share with us, and Sylvia can let me know how many years you have been teaching. So I don't know if you've been teaching 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years like me. I had somebody in a webinar the other day from Lebanon who had been teaching for 50 years. And I was shocked. I said, wow, that's dedication. So thank you for joining us. Yes, what have we got, Sylvia? What sort of work experience?
We start with, for example, 16 years, more than 35 years, 26 years. I'm new in teaching, also new teachers, huh?
Good. Okay. So that's nice to have that mix. So thank you for sharing that with us. So for those of us with more than 30 years, more than 20 years experience, congratulations. We are the survivors. We're setting a very good example for the new generation that we're still here and still learning. So thank you again for joining us. So just very quickly, I normally ask at the beginning of my lessons how the children are feeling. So I talk to them, I show some pictures, or I just go around the circle and have them ask each other, or I have them put their pictures on different posters or whatever it is to show me how they're feeling. So if you'd like, feel free again to tell us in the chat box, how do you feel today? Do you feel like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, or 10? So for me personally, I feel a little bit like number 8. I'm a little tired. I'm a little bit tired today. I'm very happy to be here, but I must admit that today I'm feeling a little tired. So how about you? Are you feeling like number 1 or 2? Are you feeling like number 4? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Like number 6? Yeah.
I can read tired as well. So number 8.
Okay.
And number 2, a little bit worried, possibly.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I hope we have a few number 1s as well. I hope so. Very good.
Yeah, yeah. And someone says number 3, could it be like stressed?
Stress, yeah. Oh, it's a stressful time of year for teachers. We have our evaluaciones and our tests. And also this year, for all of us teaching, second term is very long. We don't have Easter until late in the spring this year. So second term is a long one. Between the long month of January and that we don't have a proper break again until mid-April, it's a lot. So don't worry. Thank you for being tired and for joining us anyway. That's real dedication. So moving on. We're going to first just define our terms, defining what literacy is. So I have a quote here. It says, in very simple terms, literacy is the ability to use language to unscramble the letters and in modern day education, when we talk about literacy, we're also talking about sharing an appreciation of and stories, as well as literacy. So just take a moment there. You don't have to write in the chat box if you don't want to. And Sylvia, you don't have to tell me, but just take a moment to think, what do you think these 4 words are? I think you know the first 2 are easy. And I think the third one's also quite easy. So I'm going to look now. So, as we said, in simple terms, we normally, when we say that someone is literate or illiterate, we talk about their ability to read and write. But nowadays, literacy goes a little bit beyond this to this idea of sharing and appreciating books. It also includes oral literacy, which, as we know, is sometimes difficult to develop. And it also includes nowadays, when we talk about literacy, it also sometimes includes digital literacy, which means not just knowing how to watch a video on YouTube, it means knowing how to communicate well using digital tools. So the definition of literacy has widened over the years. But the basic idea of literacy is that children can express themselves and understand reading and writing. So this session is dealing mostly with early literacy, with children under the age of 6 or 7. So maybe some of you teach older learners, don't worry, but this idea today is basically focusing on early literacy. So for example, what do we consider literacy in the cases of children who are not reading or writing in their own language yet? When children cannot read or write in their own language yet, we talk about early literacy. So what is it? Early literacy might be things like showing appreciation, sharing reading with older people. So all of you who read bedtime stories or read stories with your children, or put, for example, in the classroom sometimes, I just put a bunch of storybooks in the middle of the carpet and let the children pick a book and just look through the pictures. They don't have to be reading the words. They're just appreciating books and images. It might be this idea of shared reading in a family. It might be initial writing skills where they're just starting to learn how to copy or write or playwright. Eventually as well, things like appreciating that other people read. So for example, quite often I tell teachers, when you go out for your break at recess and you have to monitor the patio, monitor the playground, take a book with you. Even if you're faking it, take a book with you. Because if you sit down and open the book, you'll be surprised at how many children will come to you and say, teacher, what are you doing? Teacher, what's that? Teacher, what's the book about? And you can tell them. So that's also helping them with their early literacy. And again, things like at special occasions, giving children books, like at Christmas time or for their birthdays. So again, Sylvia and I were talking about this a bit before the session. We've gone so into the digital age now that we've almost forgotten how to appreciate print books. But research has shown over and over again that working with print books and exposing children to print in real books can help their literacy greatly, having that experience of working with text. So moving on. Oops, gave away some of the answers there. So early literacy. If you were quick, you saw some of the answers perhaps. I went too quickly there. So you have a sentence here, some sentences here. The words you need to put in the gaps are writing, activities, skills, develop, early. So just take a minute to read through the text and see if you can put the words in the correct place. And you don't have to write them in the chat box. If you want to, you can, but you don't have to. And Sylvia, you don't have to tell me the words. So just take a look. Many of the are useful for them, even though they're not related to reading and A number of different need to be developed in order to read and write. In class, we can do activities to enhance So I hope you're able to fill in the gaps. And let's take a look. So as it says here, many of the activities we do with children are useful for them to develop literacy, even though they are not directly related to reading and writing. So this is what we're going to look at today. Some things we might be doing in class that we think it's just a game or just playing with Play-Doh or whatever, and it turns out that we're actually helping them with their literacy. A number of different skills need to be developed in order to read and write. And in class, we can do activities to enhance early reading and writing skills. So this is our definition of early literacy. So I often think of literacy as building blocks. Like when you build a house, you don't build a house in a day. Like the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. We have to build it block by block. So some of the things we can do to develop early literacy include creating a literate environment, doing pre-reading activities, developing oral and listening skills, and doing pre-writing. So we're going to look at these different sections one by one. So the first one, a literate environment. So this is what we looked at before when we talked about reading stories, taking a book to the playground, bringing books to class, taking an excursion to the library, having a storyteller come to class, having older students in the school come and tell stories at class. So we can try to motivate them to read, provide them with motivation through creating literacy environments. You might have a book area in the classroom or a book corner, or if you have a school library, you might go visit the library once in a while. You can make sure that reading is always a pleasant experience. So, you know, like we can encourage extensive reading, but don't make it a torturous task with heavy duty grades and things where it becomes unpleasant. And like I said before, we need to set a good example. Many times when I'm working on teacher training and they say, oh, you know, kids don't read anymore. And I say, oh, and do you? Oh, well, no, I used to read. I don't have time to read now. Or I used to read, but now I'm too busy looking at my Facebook page. So again, if we want children to read, it's our responsibility also to set a good example. And nowadays, we're all very busy and we're all very hooked on our little cell phones. So we have to be careful to create this environment of literacy for young learners. Another thing we can do to help literacy is to develop pre-reading skills. So they might not even be reading in their own language yet, but we can already start working on pre-reading skills. Some of these things might be working on direction, especially if you have children in the class who come from other languages. I work a lot with children from North Africa. I work a lot in North Africa. I work a lot with people in Eastern Europe who come from different alphabets or from different directions of writing. And so it's very important for children, even if they're using the Latin alphabet, but if they come from other alphabets or other languages, to learn about direction. What direction do words go in on the page? We can work on letters. We can work on visual discrimination, and we can work on concepts of print. So let's look at some examples of this. And I've included a little web page there from familylearning.org that you can look at in your own time. Okay, well, you can't see this one possibly so well, the pictures on the left, but you've got your bus and your dog and your cat and all of these things on the left. So developing reading skills, direction and letter skills. So as you can see here, you have your bus, and they have to follow the lines to the letter B. So things like this. So there's looking at the direction, words go in from left to right, and they're looking at first letters. So we have our apple, our bus, our cat, our the dog. And so we're learning to read through images, and we're learning about what direction we will eventually read in. So this is from our Smart Start book from ELI. We can also help them learn to read by developing visual skills. So anytime we're using the images in our book, where students are recognizing colors or shapes or size, any types of activities like these that help students to discriminate. For example, quite often we say, find two dolls that look the same. Which one is different? Although we're not actually working on a reading text, we are helping them develop the visual skills they will need when they read. So it says here, when children learn to read, they need to be able to look at words and letters and detect small variations. So if we're working with them already on developing their visual skills, on looking for small variations and differences between images, then when it comes to looking at letters, they will already have this skill developed. So in this case, they were looking here at different dollies and finding ones that were the same or different. So you might look at that and say, that's not reading. But for a young learner who is not reading yet, these are the skills they will need for reading. So for example, if we look here, and of course for children who have dyslexia or who come from other languages, these small differences are important to notice. So we have here the letters D and B. So I might talk to my children and say, what's the difference? What's the difference between the D and the B? And sometimes we talk about things like, oh, well, the D has its tummy to the left and the B has a tummy to the right. So we're just looking at subtle differences. Or when you look at the difference between C and E, for an adult, you just say, well, it's a different letter. It's a different letter. But when you're only 3 or 4 or 5 years old, those letters actually look very, very similar. So you have to show them, oh, look, the E has a line here. Oh, look, it's a C, but it has a little line. Oh, wow, it's different. So then you could maybe put some D's and B's and C's and E's on a page, and that they have to color all of the D's the same color and the B's the same color and the C's the same color, so that it's showing them how to distinguish between letters. And as it says here, in order to learn to read, children need to look at words and their variations, as we said on the previous slide. Okay, so I hope you're doing okay so far. You can also do this. This was from an old book from ELI called Pandy the Panda, one that I wrote. And here we were doing the same thing. We were working on visual discrimination, where, what direction are the fish looking? How many fish? What's similar? What's different? And then, of course, they would color the big fish. So again, you might look at this in your book and think, oh, I'm just working on colors. I'm just working on counting. When in reality, you're working on much, much more than that. You are developing their pre-reading skills as well. So moving on, as the children get a little older and as they're working at a higher level, you can do things like this, spot the differences. So what's the difference between these two pictures? So some of the differences, I'm sure you can see some of the differences. Some of the differences are obvious. We have different animal here, for example, 2 different animals. But some of the differences might be more subtle, what they're holding in their hands or how they're feeling or things in the background. So things like this as well are fantastic for students to develop pre-reading skills. Another way to work on pre-reading skills are things like this odd one out. So again, you're working on their critical thinking skills, but you're also working on their visual discrimination skills. So you've got your rubber, your pencil, your donkey, and your book. So obviously they would know that the donkey is different in terms of content, but then you could talk to them about the different places where we use these items or what shape they are, if they're square, if they're long, if they're short, things like that. So the more they can identify differences in objects, the easier it will be for them to identify differences in letters. And another thing I love doing with the kids are these rebus puzzles or reading texts where they have little pictures to follow. And the kids love these. And like when you look at some of the reading texts that kids are hooked on nowadays, there's a lot of visuals. So, you know, like some of the words are drawn in different types of letters or in different sizes, even in stories. So again, we're helping students understand the meaning of things using images. So we have here with the mouse and the rabbit, you know, is the rabbit behind the door? Is the hamster on the lamp? And things like this, so that they're able to form basic questions or say basic sentences just reading images. So this use of visual messages for young learners is also fantastic for developing their pre-reading skills. And then finally, as they move on a little bit further, you can start developing pre-reading skills through words and images. So, you know, they start having these sort of picture dictionary type things where you've got hello, goodbye, children, girl, boy. And sometimes, of course, they will make mistakes. You know, like the children will say goodbye and things like this, or, you know, orange. It's okay. That's part of also learning the English language where the words don't always coincide with how they look and how we say them. So the more we work on green, purple, orange, green, purple, orange, green, purple, orange, some of the kids will start to say, hey, those letters under the picture are the word the teacher is saying. Some of them will take longer. Some of them will catch on quite quickly. Some of them will test. For example, I think in Italy it's the same, but in Spanish, they learn to read according to what they see. Whereas in English, some words are just sight words. They have to just learn them. They don't have a phonetic way of reading them. So for example, the word like orange, they just have to learn that O-R-A-N-G-E makes orange. So the more we expose them to words and images without forcing it, without scolding them, without being concerned if all of them can read the words, you're starting to expose them to these pre-reading skills. So anything with picture dictionaries, labeled posters, labeled images, putting the sticky notes on images for fun can be a way, again, of working on their pre-reading skills. So we are almost, I think we're now halfway through. Oh yes, more than halfway through. So just sitting at your desk, have a quick stretch. Oh, have a quick stretch because we've had a long day and many of us are tired. I do this with my students as well in class, even with my university students. We have a stretch sometimes like a cat and we roll our shoulders and stretch our arms and sit up nice and straight and breathe in and out just to keep our bodies moving. So there's somebody having a nice cat stretch. So we've looked at creating a literate environment and we've looked at doing some pre-reading activities. So now, oral and listening skills. As it says here, stories, songs, rhymes, and chants are an essential part of pre-primary education to help develop listening skills. Listening skills are vital for children to understand the sound-spelling relationship that reading and writing in English involves. So like I said before with the word orange, the more times they hear the word orange and see the word orange, the more likely they will be able to read the word orange. And again, I cannot emphasize enough this idea of having songs and chants and rhymes to work on with the kids. So quite often I go to primary and preschool classrooms and I encourage the teachers, not always, sometimes they can work quietly, but when they're doing a craft or when they're doing a worksheet or when they're doing something, to just have some music on in the background. And you would be surprised that the kids will start chanting along with the song or singing along with the song, that they're learning it passively, but that they are producing the song because they've heard it so many times. So a bit like us when we hear a song on the radio every day when we drive to work, and suddenly we find ourselves singing it, and you're like, oh, where did that come from? Or you're in a shopping center and they've got the music on in the background, and suddenly you go out to your car and you're like, why am I singing that song? Well, the same thing happens with the kids. So the more we can expose them to listening skills, the better their oral skills will be. So some of the things I do, and you know I love puppets because I'm here with Rocky, and Rocky loves coming to class with me and meeting the kids. So what I do sometimes with Rocky, and you can do this with any puppet, with any doll, with any toy in the classroom, are games like pass the puppet or pass the toy. So I teach the children how to treat him nicely, that we don't throw him, we don't pull on his legs, we don't pull on his tail, that we pass Rocky very nicely from one to another. And then I play a song that we know. So we might be doing, hello, hello, and we pass the puppet around. I pause the music, and whoever's holding Rocky has to answer a question. So I might show a flashcard, or if they're a little bit older, show a word and ask, what's this? I might do the same thing where the children are passing the puppet or passing the toy around the room. I stop the music. I have some cards in the center, and whoever has the puppet has to go and touch the card and show the card that I'm saying. So in the first activity, the children are saying the word. In the second activity, the children are listening and identifying the word. Or I might ask the children a question, just a general question, what's your name? How old are you? What's the weather like, to do my routines? So again, little games like this, silly little games that you can do in the classroom, are excellent ways of developing their oral and listening skills, which are fundamental to their literacy program. And just moving on from there, as they get a little older, you can start playing games. So for example, here in the story garden, we have our, tongue twisters and our listening games where there's focusing on specific sounds like hot, happy, hamburger, hungry, or dog, desk, donkey, door. And what I love doing with the kids is working on how our mouths look when we make certain sounds, or what happens to our lips when we make certain sounds, or how does our mouth look when we make certain sounds. And then, of course, they can listen again and identify the words that begin with that letter. And then here, of course, you've got things where they can distinguish between the d sound and the t sound. So the difference between d dog and t turtle. Or in the first activity here, where they are trying to distinguish between things like apple and hand, or hand and ice cream. The sounds that they might get confused, we can focus on those specifically. And again, other things you can do in that same area are things like looking at different words. And what I did yesterday, for example, in one of the classes I was at, we were looking at things like sad, surprised, angry, happy, scared. And what we had to do was say the words according to that emotion. So working on oral skills again by things like saying sad, sad, and then surprised, angry, happy, scared, disgusted, disgusted. So we said the words according to what they meant, and then I showed flashcards, and the children had to say the word according to the flashcard. So I would show the flashcard for pencil and say sad, and then they would all say pencil. Or I showed the flashcard for rubber, and they had to say rubber. So again, working on your oral skills, working on your listening skills, but making it fun and engaging. So in this case, the children have to eventually then match the dear little doggies, and I love dogs. I work with foster dogs, so I was very happy to see this activity. Oh, look, and there's even a Rocky. I didn't realize, Rocky, you have competition. So Rocky the raccoon is checking out that dog. Wow, he can't believe it. There's somebody with his name in the book. And then, of course, the children can go on from there to work on simple activities with simple conversations like, are you scared? Yes, I am. Oh, well, if you're scared, you must be Lola. So they can play some guessing games. So we looked at emotions at the beginning, and now again, through our little doggies, we are looking at emotions too. So all of these things help their oral skills. So we've looked at literate environment, pre-reading, oral skills and listening skills, and now just very quickly before we finish, we're going to look at writing. So here we have two different things we can work on. The first thing is what we would call fine motor skills. So fine motor skills is this sort of what we would refer to as accuracy. So young children have a natural enthusiasm for trying to write before they have even been taught. So sometimes you might be writing a shopping list on a piece of paper, and suddenly you see your child writing some lines on a piece of paper trying to pretend write or play write. This natural enthusiasm can be developed early for early writing skills. So before they begin to write, they need to develop the skill of holding and controlling writing implements. So we want them to be good writers. It means we have to be already giving them crayons and pens and colored pencils and all sorts of different writing tools to develop their fine motor skills. So when it comes to exploiting natural enthusiasm, this would be a bit their writing fluency. And then when we talk about developing fine motor skills, we're talking a bit more about their accuracy. So just like with speaking, fluency and accuracy, the same thing with writing. When we're talking about writing fluency, it might be things like drawing, playwriting, scribbling, doodling. I sometimes just put a little doodle on a piece of paper for the child, and then they have to try to finish the picture. So it's just for fun. Or they love doing the sky writing. So, you know, when we do the A, B, C, D, and we're writing in the air. So these are all pre-writing things, and they're just for fun, just for fluency. If we want to develop their fine motor skills, one of the things that I'm sometimes surprised at is this idea of how much it hurts their hands when they start writing and start coloring, especially with coloring. You sometimes have the little children say to you, it hurts. It hurts when they've colored too long with a crayon. They say their little hand hurts. And it's true. Our hand is full of muscles. And so we need to develop and strengthen their little hand muscles as well. So what I do sometimes with the plasticine is things like squeezing the plasticine, letting it go, rolling the plasticine, making balls with the plasticine, holding on to things so that we're working on developing their hands. Anything where they are tracing over numbers or shapes or joining things together is accuracy based. Anything with patterns or mazes staying within the lines is accuracy based. Anything where they are completing pictures, where you have sort of half an apple and they have to draw the other half, those are all pre-writing accuracy skills. So I'm sure you do these things in your class, but just to see that these are ways of developing our writing skills. So for example, here with the maze, you know, for us, it's quite easy to stay within the lines, following the maze. But for a young learner, this is excellent pre-writing. Here, where they have to, you know, freely draw a picture on their t-shirt. We're also working on their writing fluency. Here, where we give them points to go between or where to start, arrows to follow, and then doing some more free writing are all pre-writing. And then all of this sort of things that we look at, coloring by numbers, this is also fantastic for accuracy. Can they color within the lines? Can they color in these little shapes? The more control they have coloring, the better control they will have writing. So moving on from there, that was our literacy section. And now we're going to just very quickly look at SEL. So Sylvia is going to launch our first poll where you have three options. Okay, so Sylvia has got the poll open. So look for your poll. And it says, do you know what SEL is? You don't have to tell us yet, but just, yes, I know. I think I know. I'm not sure. So just let us know in the poll, and Sylvia will let me know the results. So this is something about previous knowledge. So you can do this with your students as well. What do they know about the topic? So let's see. Let's see if Rocky knows. Rocky's checking it out. Yes,
Let's wait
knows.
for a few seconds more
Of
so
course.
that our teachers might have enough time to get through the answers.
Yeah, so take a look at the poll. We'll give you another 30 seconds. Yes, I know. I think I know. I'm not sure when we look at SEL.
Okay, I think I can see a clear result. So 51% says, I'm not sure what SEL refers to.
Okay. Okay, well, that's
very
good.
interesting.
That's great. That means that we have something new to learn today. Fantastic. I'm sure when you see it, you'll say, oh, I knew that. So SEL is social emotional learning. So you might know this as values education or other things. This is not a new concept for us, but it's maybe a new name. So it says here, in a world where emotional intelligence is crucial for lifelong happiness, successful careers, and healthy relationships, social emotional learning, SEL, is the process through which children and adults can better understand, manage, and express emotions and empathy, develop positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So for those of us who have been teaching 15, 20, 30 years, this is what we have done when we've used values through stories and things like that. Now it's got a name, SEL, social emotional learning. So this is helping students to regulate their emotions, show positive emotions in class, learn to be empathetic, and all of these things. So this is based on a model by Castle, which is used at a lot of schools nowadays. And as you can see, it sort of starts with the learner and builds out. So social and emotional learning has to do with self-awareness and self-management, with social awareness and relationship skills, and with responsible decision making. So this has to do with our classrooms, how we develop the curriculum. It has to do with the school, what sort of school policies and practices there are. And then, of course, working with homes and communities. So this is sort of the background to SEL. So I'll be sending you this in your handout. So when I give you the document at the end, I'm not going to read this now. The print is very small and I would have to take out my glasses to read it. But as you can see, we look at the different sections here and then different things you can work on. So for example, in the self-awareness, we started the class by identifying our emotions. We were talking about, helping to build students' self-confidence, where it can be talking about how to reflect on things, about how to communicate. So a lot of the things we talked about in the literacy section could also be sort of introduced here. That they have connections here. So for example, for communication and social engagement, when we're working in a pair work activity, we are encouraging relationships, communication, and language skills at the same time. Okay, so I will send you this. So this is the model that most people use nowadays, the Cassell model. So if you look in your books, you've got loads of examples here. These ones are from Story Garden, but things like, 4 little magic words open all the doors in the world. 2 little words are thank you. 1 little word is please. And the last little word is sorry. So in my classrooms, I often, sometimes we're handing out things in the preschool classroom. I teach a rubber and I give them the rubber and I say, okay, say rubber, please. And then I say, here you are. And they say, thank you. Or when we have a little fight, I have them say sorry, or things like here where the little boy is showing some proper greeting and leave taking. And as the little boy says, I always say hello or hi, good morning or goodbye. I look into my friend's eyes and I smile, smile, and smile. So again, we're working on language skills, we're working on literacy, but we're also working on social skills here. Things like here, are you happy today? Or here, where instead of looking at pictures and answering, they actually draw a picture of their own emoji and tell their partners how they feel. Again, things like life skills. This is obviously for now getting into primary school. You know, what colors represent. So in your case, you know, is a happy star yellow or is it orange or is it black? You know, what do colors transmit to us? And here, look at my face and see how I feel inside of me. I like when I'm happy, like when I'm sad. Or here, you know, where you feel the emotions. When I'm happy, I feel it in my heart or in my head or whatever it is. Okay. And then here, I thought this was very nice, this emotional awareness with their feelings diary. So very simple activities, which again are working on language, but give students an opportunity to also work on values and SEL. So here, helping other people, where we can help people, how we can help people, taking it home, draw your secret place, show your family, where do you feel safe, and things like that. So just a few examples there. Again, working on emotions and communication. In this case, they're doing a hands-on craft where they draw half faces and then have to guess what the other person is feeling. So, you know, making it a game, but we're also working on identifying how people feel. One of the greatest ways of working on SEL obviously is through story. So Story Garden is excellent for this because of course we can see other people's emotions. You know, oh, he's angry, he's scared, you know, she's worried, he's sad, oh, he's nervous, you know. So through the illustrations, through the stories, children are developing emotional awareness, how to solve problems, and empathy just through the stories they read and work on. Well, just to end off this section on SEL, it says here, they may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I think this is absolutely true, especially teaching the very young learners. I often tell my kindergarten teachers that if children leave kindergarten loving English, we have more than done our jobs, that they need to love the language. And just before we end, this is not a product from ELI, but it's a project that I worked on with a very close friend of mine. If you're looking for some extra songs and videos, you can check out the Dancing English webpage where you'll have songs and videos and worksheets that you can use. And again, this idea of using movement in class. So just to close off, just before we go to your questions and answers, we have our second poll for today. How do you feel? We did a very short webinar today, but how do you feel? Do you feel positive? Did you get any new ideas? Okay, I was satisfied, it was useful, or do you feel a bit like, I didn't really learn a lot? Maybe the only thing you learned today was the word SEL, but I hope you got some new insights into what early literacy means, how we can develop pre-reading and writing skills, and how you can bring social and emotional learning into your lessons. So let's see, I feel positive, I feel satisfied, or I feel disappointed. Let's see. Rocky's going to check out what's going on here. Oh, he's feeling positive, but I think he's feeling positive because he's going to have his dinner now. So Rocky's not a good example to follow. Oh, now he's feeling a bit sad. Okay, well, here he is. Okay, fantastic. Don't worry, Rocky. We're almost done. Very good. So let's see how you feel yourselves after the webinar.
Okay, I can read some answers for you. Yes, definitely the 62% said, you know, I feel positive, I got a lot of new ideas. And only 35%, like I feel satisfied, it was useful. Okay. And nothing, no one voted the last one, which is very good then.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. And like I said, for those of us who've been teaching forever, I know it's sometimes difficult to find new ideas. More than anything, we sometimes refresh what we already know. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Sylvia for having us. Thank you to Sylvia for hosting our polls. So in your documents section, I think it's there. Yes, Sylvia, if they go to documents, will they find, yeah, if you go to documents, you will
Yes.
see summary, language and literacy March 2025. So you can open that up. So in your little box there where you have audience view and things like that, you can find in documents, you can find your summary. And if any of you have any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to type them into the chat box now. Rocky and I are here to answer them. And thank you very much for joining us. Rocky was happy to meet you. And if you have any questions, please let us know. He's here waiting as well to find out if you have any questions. And thanks again for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon. Oh, I can't hear you, Sylvia. No, we can't hear you. We've lost your audio.
Oh, sorry. Here I am. Here I am. Yes, I was going to say, let's wait for a few seconds more so that our teachers might have enough time to type in the chat box.
Okay. And I hope you could all get the handout. I hope you could all get the summary that Sylvia kindly posted there for us.
Yeah, please feel free to download the PDF under documents you can find on your smartphone or PC. Okay, so I've got a first question for you, Nina.
Yeah.
Okay, what happens if some pupils don't feel confident writing?
Okay. Again, if you make writing a game, especially with the younger learners, don't tell them that they're actually writing. It can be disguised as drawing or playing with shapes or tracing or doing puzzles. So like I said, I think sometimes they don't like writing if they think they're going to be corrected or punished or do it right or wrong. So if you can try to make writing as ludic and as enjoyable as possible, I think you won't have them complaining about writing. But don't overcorrect when they're little. Thank you for that question.
Okay, then I got another one. So if I teach reading in English to very young learners, will they get confused when reading in the mother tongue, in their mother tongue?
Okay, yeah, this one comes up a lot. This is one of the good things and bad things about teaching a second language with very young learners. I think the benefits definitely outweigh the things that might be negative about teaching two languages at the same time. But obviously, like in Spain, where the children are taught to, read what they see on the page, and suddenly here they are saying orange, and you're saying it's orange. Yes, they might have moments of possible confusions at those stages, but it's nothing to be concerned about. They will figure it out with time, and the more we expose them to the language, the better they'll get. And as they live in a language, they're normally living with Italian around them or living with Spanish around them or living with French around them. We don't need to be concerned about that.
Okay, there's another question regarding, again, writing. So is there any idea that would make writing collaborative, especially
Yeah,
with age?
Oh my goodness, you can't imagine the wonderful things you can do with collaborative writing at this age. At the school I was visiting yesterday, they do collaborative writing at tables. So for example, the teacher, we do a lot of activities with collaborative, but one of the ones they love doing is pass the paper. And so the teacher has them sitting at the table, and one child is the captain for the table and has a big piece of paper. And then they take turns, for example. Yesterday we were doing musical instruments. And so she had little flashcards with the musical instruments. And then sometimes she would pass them, put a little pile in the middle. And the children had to take the cards one by one and draw the instrument on the piece of paper. So visual, drawing, which is pre-writing. And then they had to pass the paper to the next kid. The next kid took an instrument. Well, in some cases, there were 3 drums, 1 trumpet, and a piano. In some cases, there was a flute, a piano, and da da da. So some of the cases, the instrument repeated. And then the captain, after the paper had gone all around the table, everybody had added their drawing. Then the captain had to say, we have 3 trumpets, we have 1 piano, and things like that. And what the teacher does is that the children actually wear a little sparkly hat. So when it's time to pass the paper, they also pass the sparkly hat. And in another classroom, we did something like that with clothes where they had a dice and they had to roll the item of clothing and then pick the color and color on their piece of paper. So they were working collaboratively. They were all coloring at the same time, the same color, but that the children were picking the color and they were doing that together on their tables. And then the different tables compared their pictures. So there are loads and loads of collaborative tasks you can do at this stage. You can work on teams, you can work at their tables. So like I said, maybe this is something we could look at for future webinars, looking at collaborative work for very young learners. But of course it's possible, and I encourage it greatly.
Okay, just one last, it's not exactly a question, but there's a teacher asking whether you can specify, when we say very young learners, which age are we referring to?
Yeah, normally up to 6. When we talk about very young learners, we're normally talking 3 to 6 or 2 to 6. So it normally means children who are not in the public school system yet, not in grade 1 yet. So normally when we refer to very young learners, it's under 6, and then young learners would be 6 up. But again, this is somewhat flexible, but normally we're talking about these children who are not yet reading and writing in their own language.
Okay, there are a few comments and questions. Even there's another question from Daniela, teacher Daniela, but it's always about writing. I can say writing is something like an issue, especially at this age, because of course we can't consider like writing, I don't know, an essay. We are talking about writing chunks or even, you know, just words, depending on the student's age. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of writing at this stage is just copying and developing their visual skills. So don't be too hard on them. I think that sometimes teachers get very worried and, oh, he's not writing that word correctly. I mean, I was observing grade 4 kids yesterday and they were making some mistakes with spelling. I teach adults at the university and some of them make mistakes with spelling. English is not an easy language to read or write, so be patient. You can't expect in preschool for them to learn everything. You know, this will also be the responsibility of teachers as they get older. So in preschool and early primary, try to make reading and writing as fun as possible, correct in a friendly way, and don't be worried if they write blue, BLU, or if they write yellow, like for example in Spanish. I mean, they just don't get yellow because of course LL together in Spanish is the Y sound. So, you know, they read yellow as yayo. They can't understand. And why does it have these two different sounds? We just have to be patient and smile. And I sometimes say, oh, English is crazy. It's crazy. Look, it says orange, and we have to say orange. Can you believe those crazy English people? So just make it fun. Make it relaxed. Don't stress out.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina. Thank you so much. I think we've reached the end of this workshop. And so I just would like to thank all our teachers who have been with us just till the end. To thank you, Nina, of course, for being with us today. And I would also like to remind all our teachers to register, to participate, to join us next week as well, because we have another webinar. Okay.
So what's next week's topic, Sylvia? What are you doing next week?
Well, it's all about task-based learning.
Oh, nice. So that sounds interesting.
Something, yeah, very, very interesting and appealing to all teachers of different, actually, sectors and students' age level as well. So I'll see you next week. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, Sylvia. And thank you for joining us, everyone. Bye-bye from Nina and bye-bye from Rocky as well.
Bye-bye, Rocky. Bye.
Bye.